morning, guys. Today I'm not really sure what we're doing. Right now I'm actually looking at the swell forecast. So Long Island doesn't look that good today. It's got a lot of west-southwest winds that are onshore, side shore here, so probably not going to be surfing today. I'm trying to look at tonight, so this is 20 hours, so that's 8 p.m. I'm trying to look at maybe tonight there could be a wave somewhere, like, in one of these green areas. So yeah, I'm still keeping my eyes open for the possibility of surfing today. And just looking at the long-term forecast, it looks like it's going to be flat for a while, unfortunately. Yeah, those northwest winds are good, but it's offshore, but it's just bringing waves, away from land almost. Another interesting option is that my sister is down in South Carolina right now and might be able to go down there and she could get some waves with this little storm system. Whatever this thing is right here, it's probably bringing waves to the Carolinas. And I've surfed South Carolina before, but I've never surfed North Carolina, so that would be an interesting adventure. Yeah, I'm not sure how much surfing I'm going to be able to do in the future forecast of the next few days, but that's good because that gives us some other time to work on some of my other goals, like becoming a really good doctor, studying, learning about immunology, and it also lets me train for my goal of being able to dunk a basketball. So I already did some flexibility training this morning, and I'm probably going to do some more stretching and training throughout the day. And yeah, it's going to be good. We're working hard and we're getting closer to our goals. All right, I'm super pumped up to make it through biochemistry. And right now we're going to start with the immunology flashcards. Yesterday I ran a mile and the pace I had set on the treadmill was actually too much for me to make it through without breathing through my mouth, so I had to resort to mouth breathing for the last half. And right now I'm just going to do a shorter distance, like maybe half a mile, and a slower pace, breathe through my nose the whole time. And I actually found out about this oxygen advantage thing through Laird Hamilton and Joe Rogan on talking on a podcast about the nitric oxide that is released in your nasal sinuses. And I thought, okay, maybe that's just some, I don't even know if that's accurate or not. But then I was reading a med school book and I found out that it is a thing, that your nasal sinuses do release nitric oxide, which helps expand your blood vessels. So I was like, all right, let's do this. So right now I've been training and trying to breathe through my nose more often. Doing some more studying right now. It's kind of what most of my day has been. Not really exciting, just getting some work done and looking to improve on my flashcards. Around 8 years ago, I put up my first YouTube video, and that was on an old channel, but ever since then, my channel has always been about surfing. Here are some of the videos from my old channel. But yeah, so I've always done videos about surfing, and I've always loved surfing video photography or whatever, and I think that started for me watching a lot of Dane Reynolds growing up. But right now I want to pivot, and I want to talk about some stuff on my channel for potential medical students, pre-med students, and anyone who wants to be a doctor. What I want to do is give advice to younger students, because I was someone who actively sought advice from older people. So in this video right now, I want to give you guys some advice on how to interview. I'll do other videos about other things in the medical school application process. But yeah, right now I just want to hit on interviewing since it's somewhat fresh. I interviewed a few months ago, and I got into every school I interviewed at. So it was definitely a skill of mine, and I think I can share some stuff to the younger generation or anyone applying to med school to help them. And I think also going over like my answers to questions and my thought process will help me improve for future interview scenarios for, you know, residency or a fellowship or, you know, a job as an attending. So yeah, I'm gonna get right into it. I have some questions from Princeton Review. I'm not gonna share anything from my actual medical school interviews because I don't think that's appropriate, but basically I just went online and looked up the 50 most common medical school interview questions. I chose 5 questions out of these 50 most common interview questions, and I'm gonna give you some advice on how to approach these questions, and I'm also gonna give you my honest answer. So your answer will probably change, or another student's answer would change based on their experiences, because those are gonna be different than mine. Alright, so I'm just going to jump right into the first question. It is, tell me about yourself. You want to make sure that you don't give too much away here. You are going to be asked a lot of other questions, so make sure you talk about your childhood, maybe where you're from, and then, you know, make sure you keep it under 90 seconds. So here we go. Tell me about yourself. My name is Lucas Hildreth. I'm the oldest of 3 younger sisters, and I grew up on Long Island, and I'm very lucky that my parents instilled a hard work ethic in me at a young age. For example, when I was 16 years old, I started working 2 jobs as a deckhand on a boat and as a bellman in a hotel out in Montauk. So I did that for 4 years in high school, and while I was studying in high school, I was very interested in biology and the evolution of life, like where did this all come from. So I went to the College of the Holy Cross, pursued a biology major. And yeah, right now I work as a medical assistant at a endoscopy center. So I help doctors and nurses out during procedures. I've learned a lot of clinical give and take, how to work with physicians, and basically how to be part of a medical team. Why did you choose your undergraduate major? So for question 2, I would recommend why you chose it, and maybe talk about some research if you have done research in your major. So when I came across my sophomore year of college, I wanted to choose a major. So I chose biology as my undergraduate major because I've always been interested in the body and how its systems work. And in high school, I was very interested in how did the first cell come together. So I chose biology because I got to learn about that, and it's something I really loved. I also had the opportunity to do research, so that was one reason why I wanted to do biology, is I wanted to do research. So I worked in Professor Clausen's lab, which focused on dodo bird biomechanics, and that was really interesting because I could see some evolution, because as we know, the dodo bird is extinct, and we had to use a lot of evolutionary specimens and like analogous birds, so making comparisons. And it brought my love of sports. I played football in college for 2 years, and I played sports my whole life. So I got to, you know, study locomotion, and that's something I've always been interested in, is biomechanics of the human body. So I got to kind of merge these 2 passions of mine in terms of biomechanics and also trying to find an evolutionary basis for that. So for question number 3, we have, what are your greatest strengths and weaknesses? I definitely recommend giving honest weaknesses. I think that's where a lot of people run into, is that cliche answer, if I work too hard, I care too much. What you really want to do is find a weakness, but you also want to present your best self. So I think it'd be best to talk about something in the past where you might have been weak at a job or experience, and you had to overcome that, and just kind of throw that in there. For what are your greatest strengths, definitely don't oversell your resume. If you volunteered at a position, talk honestly about that. Don't say that you did things outside of your actual role. So here's how I would answer. What are your greatest strengths and weaknesses? My greatest strength that I have right now, and that I will continue to have as a doctor, is my ability to public speak and emphasize with people. So growing up, I worked as a deckhand and a bellhand. So growing up, as I mentioned before, I worked as a bellman and a deckhand, and I was constantly interacting with people and building those personal skills. And it's something that I've used throughout my whole college career. For example, for my dodo bird biomechanic research lab, we went to Arizona to present some of our hypothesis and present at a conference. So right there, I really, during the presentation, I had to use my public speaking skills, and throughout the conference, talking with people about ideas, I had to use those interpersonal skills. And I use them today as a medical assistant, helping patients and just trying to make sure they're okay as they go into procedures. And I also use it in the operating room itself when I'm working with doctors, just communicating effectively. It's something I really like to do. I enjoy public speaking, so I think that will always be a benefit for me. My biggest weakness, I would say, when I started my job as a medical assistant, one of the things I was weak in was my turnover time. So I'm responsible for the turnover of the operating room, and I have about 15 minutes to do it. And when I started, it definitely took me longer. And I'm someone who likes to get things right and do it slowly. Like when I study for a test, I'm always like a marathon, not a sprint. So I had to get used to doing things right and doing things quickly. So I think the best way that I overcame that was just by putting in more time at work, asking questions, going fast, and maybe asking other people like, hey, could you double check my work? And yeah, I think so. That was one of my weaknesses. Alright guys, so for question number 4, we have the famous one, why do you want to be a doctor? And I think this question really stumps a lot of pre-med students because there really is no correct answer. I want to save lives, I want to help people. I think those are great reasons why you should become a doctor, or why someone should be a doctor. However, I don't think they're very unique, so I think in a very competitive application cycle, when you're interviewing against several other students, you want to come up with a unique answer. So I think that should fit your personal experiences. So I'll jump right into why I want to be a doctor. The main reason why I want to be a doctor is I want to be a community leader, and I want to work within a medical team to improve the quality of life of patients. So growing up, I've mentioned those experiences before where I was a deckhand and a bellman, and I've always built those interpersonal skills and whatnot, and I've always played sports, and sports has taught me a lot about leadership. And so those two qualities are very important to me, and it wasn't until my junior year where I actually worked at the Winthrop Urology department where I really learned about medicine improving someone's quality of life. So while I was working at Winthrop Urology, I learned about procedures that would help someone's urinary tract issues and stuff like that, When I was at Winthrop, I learned about patients' urinary issues and urinary health, something that's totally overlooked in a lot of places. So I did research on a procedure called the UroLift, and I was fascinated by some of the outcomes and how patients were reporting specifically their urinary quality of health improving. And it was such a big link to their actual quality of life, like how they were doing overall. So I was really fascinated by that, and that's something that really drew me towards medicine. Not just urology in particular, but being able to have a difficult conversation with someone regarding something very personal and very sensitive to them, such as their urinary health, and then working with them to improve that area. And then right now, as a medical technician, as a medical assistant, I work alongside doctors during procedures, I work alongside nurses, and I really see the physicians as a leader. And you can absolutely be a leader as a nurse or a technician. I'm a leader every day at work just by having a positive mindset and doing my job right. But what specifically sets why I want to be a doctor specifically is because I want to make those hard decisions, and I think I'm going to be a great leader. For the last question we have here off the Princeton Review site is, what books, films, or other media come to mind as having particularly been important to your sciences and non-sciences education? So right here, I think a lot of people might mention something about like Grey's Anatomy or ER. I probably wouldn't recommend doing that just because you want to stay unique. This isn't a question I have practiced, so I'm just going to answer it very candidly. One of the books I read while I was in high school has been really important to my future career as a physician. It was called Into Thin Air. It was about a bunch of medical professionals who were climbing Mount Everest, and they, were a little late, and they decided to go to the summit anyway, knowing that it would push them descending. They'd have to descend Mount Everest at night, and it would cause a ton of issues. So there was like a cutoff time where they were like, you need to be, at this certain point of the mountain, or else you have to turn around. So this was really important because they all decided to like keep pushing because they couldn't see failure as an option in this scenario. And yeah, it caused a lot of other issues, and they were all so ambitious. They were all a bunch of professionals, some were even doctors, and a majority of them died because they couldn't see any other way besides that. They had to summit, they couldn't fail. And I think this is a good book for me personally to learn from because I'm someone who's super ambitious and I'm someone who loves to work hard. So I think it's important just to keep your ambition in check, especially as a medical physician. I think doctors today are very caring, very hardworking, so I would be worried if they, I can see this issue applying to medicine where doctors have a lot of patients to see in one day and they might rush through because they have to make sure they see all the patients, when that could cause an issue, or that could hurt a patient if you're rushing. So I think it's really important just to have that understanding of how ambition can go wrong as I get into medical school and as I become a future physician. So I'll leave you guys with a little story from my past. I didn't have the best grades in college. I had good grades. I had an okay MCAT. I obviously got in after 1 year off, but when I was a pre-med student, I went to the pre-med committee, and you work so hard to impress these people, and they wanted me to take more years off. They wanted me to, not apply right away. And I thought about their consideration, but I really wanted to be a doctor, and I felt like I've had the, personal experiences, and I've reflected on them enough to know I'm, ready for a career in medicine. So around my senior year, I went to the pre-health committee, and they told me, we just don't see you being able to compete with a student who's taken 2 years off in an interview. And I looked them dead in the eyes and I said, oh, if I get an interview, I'm getting in. And that ended up being true because every school I interviewed at, I got in. And I think this is a good message for students like me who may not have the best grades and may not be super intelligent. Is that if you have personal skills, if you have that kind of intelligence where you can, communicate and empathize with people, that, the interview is a great place to show that, and you definitely want to practice and work hard because here's your shot, and you definitely want to do a good job of that come interview day.